Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, was the place here?
Hey, look at that.
Right here, keeping an eye on it.
There's chessboard being upstairs.
Sarah, any public correspondence?
We do have a public correspondence from Karen, who visited our meeting last session. She wanted to note that she thinks everyone is focused on doing a thoughtful and thorough job for the town as these schools are designed. The first note is about enclosed courtyards. She shares that these structures can trap and harm birds. When I worked in New Haven, the building I worked in had enclosed courtyards, and every so often hawks would be trapped in the courtyards, unable to figure out how to escape. Or they were intent on catching prey, so crashed into a window and died, which sounds terrible. Smaller birds would also crash into the windows. If you go with enclosed courtyards, please consider the use of bird-friendly glass to reduce and eliminate bird mortality. And she provided a suggestion, which I can share with the group. Also regarding turtles, I do hope you begin the search for turtles as soon as possible. Now is breeding season for most native turtle species in Connecticut. It would be good to find out which species live in the area, so perhaps some accommodations can be made for them. It would be good also to know which species of special concern make that area home. I have found eastern box turtles in Courier Woods, for example. And thanks for your consideration, Karen.
I know when we did interviews, the question of turtles in the north end site came up in a couple of times, so I know that's one thing. It's part of looking at the wetlands there, that's something that we're doing, so. The bird issue, I don't think we've ever had a conversation on, although I do have to say, run into issues before we have large amounts of glass that birds do sometimes fly right into, not
That would be-
realizing it's there.
Be pretty traumatic, I think, for children.
Okay, and we have nobody from the public here today. Approval of minutes, May 11th, 2023, I know that one came up at the last meeting, but there wasn't a majority. And so do I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th?
So move.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? And opposed?
One abstain.
Yeah, I'll abstain also, because I wasn't here.
Three abstentions.
Five.
But we have our five.
We did it.
There we go. All right, May 25th?
We did.
Yeah. Really. We did it.
No, we did, that's
Took
right.
2 weeks, but before.
May 25th, 2023, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved, seconded?
Second.
Second? Any discussion?
The public comments correspondence section, that should include the people that made comments. There's comments made last time by 2 people, both regarding energy. So we should capture their name and the comments that they make in there.
So I can provide both of those to Ron,
Okay.
but I have to go through my folder. That's
Okay. With,
a very good point.
with that note, can we approve minutes as amended?
So.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
You abstain.
And I'll abstain.
2 abstentions. We have no submitted invoices for this evening, so we'll move right past that. Chairman's report, I'm gonna make mine very, very quick. I think the architects are going to go over in depth much of what I was gonna talk about. We had a meeting yesterday, Zoom meeting with OSCGR. From my point of view, went extremely well, but I will let Jeff and Justin speak to it in greater detail when their time comes up. Okay. commissioning agent firms. Did everybody have an opportunity to look through the submissions?
Honey, good seat's still available.
Briefly.
There wasn't a lot of detail. Nearly as large and detailed as what we dealt with in previous appointments. I know there was conversation last meeting regarding whether we wanted to handle these as we had in the past as a full committee of the whole, or if we wanted a working group of whatever, 2 or 3 people who would go through and do the RFP and interview. Can you fill me in a little bit on what that conversation was? I was on Zoom, but couldn't always hear all the details.
So I think everyone that was present at the meeting seemed in favor of creating a working group. But because we were very slim margins to quorum, we wanted to bring the group back together to talk about it a little bit more and see if there were more volunteers who felt comfortable being part of that working group, since it is a very specific knowledge base kind of needed about commissioning agents. And anyone else, please correct me if I'm representing it wrong.
That's right.
Nailed it.
So how would we like to proceed? So throwing it out to the group here.
I like and not being
I feel really similarly.
I don't mind being on one.
To be honest, I'm still not entirely sure what the commissioning agent will wind up doing even after seeing these.
We'll never see them.
Okay, well that helps, yeah. So they just need to be like,
Yeah, well, I know when Greg and I were talking the other day, you know, I'm gonna take these home so I can figure
Learn
out
what a
this
commissioning
person
agent
does. And from what I gathered is somebody who oversees all of the mechanical and technological pieces of the program.
They're sort of behind the scenes, making sure it works, sort of that we're hired Pitbull to go and make sure it's working.
Oh, I like
What I
those
can
people.
tell is who they report to. Like, if they have an issue, they come to us, or they go to the architect, or they go to
It'd be the owner's rep.
owner's
Oh,
rep they
okay.
go to? Okay.
So
Yeah,
we're-
basically they make sure
I like it.
that the equipment functions the way the
Mhm.
engineer designed
mm,
it. It's not just-
And are they're in charge of doing some of the training themselves?
Not necessarily, usually that's the contractor.
Oh, okay.
Are they able to offer alternatives? It seemed like that's something they do. And then what happens if you disagree? Well, I guess that's a question we would ask them in the interviews. You know, if they said we want, you know, plastic and you want glass.
So usually you don't get into those level
Mhm.
of disagreements, but I will say that they're typically involved much earlier in the process. As part of the requirements for Connecticut high-performance buildings, they're required to be part of a schematic design, basis of design discussion, so that they're an attendee in that meeting along with the owner's project manager, construction manager, engineers, architects. They help develop the commissioning specification at the front end of the project manual, and they also make sure that those requirements are part of the technical specifications when you start getting into more of the mechanical, plumbing, electrical, technical sections of the spec. So they're usually on board with and familiar with the designs, the mechanical system designs early in the project. They also review our construction details to offer recommendations for, say, placement of air vapor barriers and overall construction details to make sure that we have a high-performing building envelope as well. So they're very much a partner in the process.
I'll return to our attorney for a second. Is there any specific guidelines or guidance in terms of procedures for, you know, in the past, we've done all this as a group of the whole, in terms of evaluating who would receive the RFP and then evaluating which company we would recommend. Is there any specific guidelines other than the fact that in the end, the committee has to approve a recommendation?
It's the same statute. The same statute that you hired the owner's rep under applies the CM and the architect applies to the commissioning agent. So all consultants, professional service providers get hired in the same process. So we issued the RFQ, the RFP. You can have a working group do the interviews if you want, and then make a recommendation to the committee as a whole. The committee as a whole will decide who the award goes to.
What about the choosing of who gets the RFP? Does that have to be done by the whole group, or can that be done by the working group?
The vote should be from the whole committee, because the working group is not gonna be a subcommittee, right?
Well, that was the discussion last time, and it's.
Right, so no subcommittee, so it doesn't really exist.
Yeah,
It's
so
just a non-quorum of people talking about something.
We could set it up as a subcommittee.
No,
Just have to do
no.
minutes and all that, but no.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. All right. So if that's the case, then as a group, we need to make a decision in terms of who's gonna receive the RFP. And then if we have a subcommittee, or not a subcommittee, a working group, which so far includes Dennis, and I'm waiting for a couple other people to step up. Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the working committee gonna, again? It sounds
Well,
to me,
they're
what I
gonna-
thought I heard was that
The working group will read over the RFPs, do the interviews, and then recommend to the entire committee the company that we should hire.
I'll throw my hand in and volunteer as well.
Wonderful. We have 4 people, we can't have any
That's it,
more than
no more.
that, we have a quorum.
It's fine if it wants to be 3.
Well, I do think it's important that we have people that have some engineering,
Yeah.
construction background. So I'm quite pleased with the 4 that stepped up, so if that's okay, then. So
How many, was it up to 4 again?
We can't go beyond 4, or you have a quorum of people, which would be an issue.
Oh, if there's
Oh,
over
oh,
6,
oh,
yeah.
yes,
up to
same,
4.
same statute, so we can choose up to 4. Now, one way to do it, I went through when I read them and I just ranked them from my top
Mhm.
down, and if you wanna do that, I
Oh,
a little
okay.
piece of paper, and you can
That's
rank them, and,
For actually issuing the RFP, we have to decide that tonight because it's supposed to be issued tomorrow.
if we're going to stay on that schedule, if we weren't ready, we can always delay that schedule a little bit, but I would like this group to make that decision this evening if we're ready.
So I think last time, for the last several, we made our decision, we just made motions, I make a motion to,
We've done it differently for different positions. We did it that way for the owner's rep. We just, for architect and CM, we actually did an evaluation form. So what is your brother's?
We passed that around, but I don't know if we want to talk about it before we rank it. I mean, I have some comments around it.
Jeff has generally asked us not to have that kind
Well,
of.
once you start scoring, if you wanna talk before you start scoring, that's fine.
does anybody feel, if I could just ask, how does everybody feel about, does anybody have any opinions to where we can make some motions for 2 or 3?
Can make some motions for some.
For
not
selecting
to-
ones to,
I had a top 3, and then an intermediate one, and a bottom 2. So I thought there were 3 that stood well above
Right off the
yours.
bat, I could make a motion for 3 to have RFPs if we wanna just go down and
Well,
see if we wanna do that. Or do we wanna do the blind vote?
No, one thing that I would mention is we're not going to interact with these people. Tecton and Arcadis are. Do we want to give them the right for an opinion? Because-
But they have to work with all these people for the rest of their career, so for them to come out and say, firm X is a
Well,
bunch of bums.
They can
that only
slip us
hurts
a
them.
note.
I probably wouldn't say it that way. Dr. Sullivan, you wanna pull up here?
Sure.
Okay.
Because
I
ultimately,
mean, they
for-
could, I would have no problem if they said to me, gee, I've worked with this company and it's been a very positive experience.
just the positive,
Yeah.
just don't mention the negative.
But you're absolutely right, I wouldn't expect anybody in a public session to say that, you know, I probably anything like that. So, I mean, if you want to say something, I'll be glad to.
I mean, I think one of the companies listed work that they've done with both of
I can tell you our experience with the firms that So, CES, Janine is currently working on a state project with us down at Western Connecticut State University. Diligent provided the commissioning services from the commencement of design all the way through the CA, and we've worked closely with them on the commissioning side. So, present experience, no issues there. SES,
Sustainable Engineering Solutions.
they're on several, Justin, you wanna speak?
They're on
Simsbury, right?
Simsbury and Providence.
Yep, yep.
Yes, they're very capable engineer. They've been diligent in the field as well, making sure that if there are items that have been brought up in field reports are continuing to linger within the field report, they certainly flag it to the entire project team to make sure it's on everybody's radar.
And Colliers we've also worked with, and we worked with them on road fields in a kind of somewhat limited capacity, but they were still the commissioning agent on portions of that work. And performed reasonably. Familiar with AKF, although we haven't worked with them, and we're familiar with Van Zelman, more on the designing and engineering side, not so much commissioning, but they did interview for one of our projects that we're currently on. The other firms I don't have much experience with. I don't think our firm does either, so.
And what I'll say is that, I had a good experience working with Sustainable Engineering Solutions. We did a project with them just recently over at the University of Hartford. They had a great bunch of people that were on top of all of the issues. They did a great review of the documents, and I think they have a good practice in sustainability too, which they bring to their review of the systems. Colliers we're working with now, up at, as Jeff said, they're at Brookfield. But I personally am working with them at the University of Massachusetts. So they're very responsive to the needs of the project. And CES I've worked with on the engineering side, but not on the commissioning side. Same with Van Zelm. So I'm familiar with AKF, CES, and Van Zelm, although I haven't worked with them on commission.
Other input that you can share before we do something here? Chris, did you have something? No?
You wanna do these one at a time, or
Well, what I would prefer is that we individually
rank them?
rank them. First, before we even begin there, I am recommending that White not be accepted since their submission did not follow the RFQ process. They submitted for one building, but they submitted electronically. They never provided the material that was called for in the RFQ. So if that is acceptable to the committee, I would not rank right at all. Colliers, as you know, there was a minor issue where the material was delivered to the Board of Education instead of to the Town Hall. So that's why it wasn't on the initial list. But my understanding is that there was a confusion in the RFQ about where the material should be delivered. So we feel Colliers should be accepted.
Yeah, it listed our location or town hall with our street address, and they were shipped to us. And then by the time we realized, it was there, they were on time.
It was on time, it was done properly, it
Yeah,
just was
it
shipped to
just
So
It was more our error than theirs, so.
what you're saying is that everyone else entered the wrong address?
No, what I'm saying is we did an addendum. The people who asked questions, when I would post the addendum, they were aware. And Colliers wasn't aware that they're, you know,
Fair enough.
it was an honest mistake, not their fault, so.
It's not their fault, that's a non-issue.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna rank these with number 1 being your top through number 6. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, okay? And they're just in alphabetical order here right now, so.
Silly question, but since we can accept up to 4, do we even have to go up to 6?
Yeah, that's a question.
I would do them all because we're gonna have, you know, you could say you've got a number 6 and she's got a number 1 and we'll average it.
But if I don't know one of them, then putting them in the mix is like voting for somebody that I have no nothing about.
Well, we don't know about most of these, you know, we're only what's in the book is. You may know some of them personally, we don't know them.
Fine, but since I know, let's just say I know 4 of them, the other 2, well, how could I rank? I feel uncomfortable ranking 5 versus a 6 on 2 that I don't know anything about. And I've already got my 4, say, so I'm done, I've met the requirement, that's why I'm asking. That's what you really want us to. You want us to, that's fine, you've answered the question, all set.
I would prefer.
All set. I got it, you're good. You don't want it, I follow you.
Take 2 5 minutes.
No, it's fine, you don't go.
It's what happened.
Yeah. Put 'em-
Just hope my 5 isn't the one that tilts it and makes that person, more comfortable gets it.
Well, you're ranking by
Yeah,
order
too
of
much.
preference, not by score.
Hand these all off to somebody and ask them if they would, we're giving them a
It's a
shot.
spreadsheet.
He said
I'll do it. I haven't read
Thank
quite
you-
enough
thank
to
you
be
again,
able to
Chuck.
adequately rank them. I don't feel right.
What's that?
Oh, he
I
gets
was
away
saying,
with it.
I was saying to Chris, I haven't read them enough to adequately rank them with my schedule lately, unfortunately. So I don't feel right
Right, so you're not gonna do it
shooting
all.
from the hip on these, no.
It's a good thing, because if you were gonna rank, we're gonna rank every single one.
I could rank them
All or
all
nothing.
3, but that didn't seem right either, you know.
All right, well, Chuck's gonna pull them together, that'll be documentation that we can give to Arcadis, because I know they have to have backup for everything that we do as we're choosing these. And then we'll come back to that after Chuck is all done, and we can decide, do we pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 companies. And then we have our working group that will go with it. I sent you a copy of a draft RFP, which our attorney had sent to us. I have no problem with Jeff and Vin putting in the dates and things that are needed and send that out tomorrow, or if the working group would rather get together and go over that, you give me some indication, how would you like to handle that?
No, I think that's fine. The one thing that I would like to have an answer to before the interviews is what is their current workload? Because they gave us their experience in the RFQ. One of them gave us their current workload. I think that was a bad move on their part. Because what it showed is that right at the time that we're trying to commission our schools, they have 3 other schools that they're commissioning. It'd be
So you
nice
would
to
like
be
that
able
added into the RFP?
to compare.
It's in the RFP, the draft order.
What's that?
It's in the draft RFP.
Is
They
it?
sent out, yeah.
Okay, because I scanned it, but I didn't read the whole thing. Fair enough, thanks.
Okay. Then, is that okay with you, that you would take the RFP, put in.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow.
All right.
It's okay that Jeff does it tomorrow.
When Jeff said he's gonna do it,
I would do it tonight if you asked me. Thank you.
all right. So we will come back to that in a bit. Planning the town council presentation. Sean, maybe if you could take a couple of minutes, I know you've had some conversation with council members, and talk just a little bit about what they're looking for.
No, I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you to everyone who's going to be available to attend Tuesday the 13th. Yeah, I talked to council leadership, again, just a great opportunity to put a face with a name, I think is the primary goal. But they sort of allocated in a relatively busy agenda, but probably about 20 to 30 minutes for this topic, so I think the best case, given where we are, you know, I think the Tecton folks will probably do most of the presenting, probably a similar presentation to what you did with OSCGR, if not the same, with where we are, current status, and where things are. Maybe I would estimate about 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15, probably tops, but enough time for the other, for the Arcadis and ONG folks to do their brief introduction, but don't really, at this stage in the game, don't need to give a lot of update information, and then kind of allowing about maybe 10 to however many minutes that they would like to ask questions, but I would expect probably 10 to 15 with where we are. And other than that, it's really, you know, just sort of an open forum. Will be kind of the tables there in front of, upstairs and the third floor in front of the dais, and
So people will be sitting at the table rather than.
I think that'd be the best. We kind of have 3 that are still there, sort of a holdover from COVID, frankly, but they've kind of stayed there at the front of the dais and are in a good spot. We'll have microphones there, and if we can talk a little more in detail, but I think if we have a handout, probably usually the best with the council, because the screen that drops in the middle of the room isn't really most ideal, and the TV is not quite big enough for everyone to see kind of details. So if we can print similar sort of printed slides. There are 9 council members, plus a couple of us out there. We usually print about 14 or 15 copies of things at least.
Would you want them to also put it onto the TV?
I don't know that, yeah, I think if we could, I mean, it's kind of helpful. It's hard to say how many people will be in the audience, but it's certainly a topic that many people are interested in. So
Usually
if there are
not a
folks
lot,
there,
but there's usually
right,
a few.
it's not hard, and we can have that set up through an HDMI cable to just have that also up there, but again, that's off on the side, as you would call from being in that room before.
Yeah.
And again, absent that, we have this kind of 2 projector system that drops the screen in the middle, but it sort of divides the council from the presenter. and it's
Yeah, they have to
always
get up from the
ideal.
table, basically.
Yeah, they don't really love it either, so I think the handouts are great, kind of supplemented with the TV. But,
Okay.
other than that, just appreciate everyone making the time, and I know, again, the council chairman and vice chairman who I met with on Monday, they're very excited to have this kind of introduction and face to a name for the hiring.
So I will do a quick intro. Is there an order that you would like me to go in?
It's really up to you. I mean, it might make more sense to have maybe the owner's rep and construction do first and then kind of finish with the architect, just because they'll go into their
Maybe do more of a
presentation, and probably
Sure.
what I would do. It's pretty informal, formally informal.
Were there council members involved with the think tanks? I know
So
there was
they've
discussion
been
about-
assigned, yeah, so the chairman appointed the district councilman, Peter Talbot, for the district around Norton, to the Norton group, and then Don Walsh, who is the 3rd district around the North End School. To that, I'm not sure, well, only one has happened. right?
We've had
In terms-
2.
No,
They had
We've had
last
both
week.
North End and Norton. And
But I don't think
unfortunately,
we were-
neither of them can participate, I don't think.
I don't think, right, I think we'll have to follow up after. I think Peter had mentioned he hadn't received an email yet from Marlene, I guess, to follow up with that. So
Okay.
We'll follow up.
Yeah, let's touch base.
All right, the reason I was asking, I didn't know if they had already seen much of the material.
I
So-
think Peter thought the next one was June 30th, whatever the next one was, he was planning to attend. I don't think he was appointed in time for the first one.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on that?
Do you want us to show up like in the audience or not show up, the commission members?
You are always
Always
welcome.
Yeah.
You know, you won't need to stand up and
Right.
speak or
Mhm.
anything. I do go every month to present an update on where we are in this particular case. You know, little more detail, so love to have you there. I think it's good for the council to see the committee members. They've been very positive as I've presented about the work that this group has done. And every time have said, please go back to the committee and tell them how pleased we are with all of your efforts and how you're moving along. So it would be wonderful. But if you can't make it, it's not a problem.
And the meeting starts at 7. Uniquely, this meeting, we have, just the way the schedule arranged, we have 6 public hearings that are starting the meeting, but they should be relatively quick. But probably get to this stage about 7:30 or so.
Oh, okay. So those public hearings start at 7 o'clock?
They start, the meeting technically starts at the conclusion of the 6 public hearings. So that would give it at least a half hour.
Is there a budget meeting before that?
There's a brief budget meeting, but not a
Okay.
capital.
Because I know sometimes there's a very formal meeting going on at 6:30 or something.
There is.
When you
Usually
walk in, you
it's-
say to yourself, oh
yeah.
my God, did I get the time wrong?
No, that happens every meeting, about 6:30 or 6:45, we usually do any budget related items.
Anything else? Good. Architects update. We've got some nice material, look for 50-something pages. I read through this afternoon.
We can summarize those pretty quickly, but first, we did include this information as part of the written update, but our civil engineer did request from DEEP a preliminary site assessment for the north end site, which found a protected species of the wood turtle, the eastern box turtle, and the eastern ribbon snake. So there are a couple of methodologies that we can move forward with. The important thing is recognizing those, and preliminarily, our soil scientists will put those into the recommendations for the report. Sometimes those are enough to discuss and incorporate into a set of construction documents for site logistics and quality control. If that is not suitable to the commissions, we will need to engage an herpetologist.
When you say commission, inland wetlands?
Inland wetlands, yes. So we did meet informally with the town planner and the assistant town planner to talk about the regulatory process. We did not bring, this is the type of question that we should address with them on the front end to make sure that, you know, we can format the information in a manner that is acceptable to the Inland Wetlands and Water Courses Commission.
What would they normally take the map of that and lay out an area that's protected? Is that what, how would we handle the fact that this is protected
There would be
species?
my understanding so far at a preliminary level, and this is in part why we didn't completely provide an update, because we're still understanding what the requirements are. My understanding is that all of these species are, their natural habitat is in the wooded areas, the wooded wetlands. So the important thing is making sure that those areas are identified, and if there are, in addition to erosion control measures that you would be putting down as part of construction, those measures also will prevent the trespass of these species into the construction field, so to speak. So, you know, you're not, as our civil engineer said, you're not going to sneak up on the eastern ribbon snake with a 10-ton piece of equipment, but a turtle you want to make sure is not within those areas. So more to come on that, but it's been recognized. It is officially, those 3 species are officially recognized in the preliminary site assessment from DEEP. What that does is it triggers further analysis and reporting from the professionals that are doing the site analysis.
So it's usually in the soil scientists report to wetlands, mitigation measures before, during, and after construction. Once that's approved, those instructions, if you will, are incorporated into the construction documents so that during construction those are complied with.
Okay, so we get a copy of that report?
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Most of
Committee
that
members.
habitat is beyond the sewer line, right?
Yes, it's mostly down the slope in the areas of the wetlands.
Wetland area.
But what you know,
Which we're not planning on disturbing anyway.
not yet.
So some bulldozer gets out of control somewhere.
So,
Do we feel that it's simply mitigation measures, or is there a possibility that there might be calendar segments where you can't work?
I don't know the answer to that yet.
It's too soon.
We did a project one time where basically it was a means and methods thing. The contractor had a couple of people walking the site every morning, picking up all the turtles, throwing them over the fence.
I was more concerned about the snake, because I had a
Not
project.
throwing.
I had a project with, I had a project with snakes where you couldn't, it was a couple of month period where you couldn't work because of the snakes, so,
We'll see.
yeah, I was just curious.
Indiana
Family
Jones.
snakes. All right, Justin, take your time on this, because I think there's a lot that's going on, that the committee hasn't always been fully involved with, so I'd like them to really get a full sense of everything that's happened.
Okay, since we started talking about our protected species on the site, I'll get into site due diligence. Surveys are more or less complete with the topographical information, the meets and bounds, and the wetlands identification on both sites. We are still waiting on some of the utility companies to provide things like inverts and elevations of some of the utility infrastructure that's in the street. So we anticipate those being completed next week. The traffic, observations of traffic patterns, pickup and drop off at both Chapman and Norton, and traffic counts at Norton are complete. We're awaiting the full report for Norton. So this comes more into play when we start going through the regulatory process, but we're highly interested in seeing the report as part of the preliminary planning for some of the site access for Norton. In terms of land use approvals, I mentioned we did hold a preliminary meeting last week on May 30th. We discussed the regulatory procedures and schedules. Our civil engineer, Banesh, did provide minutes that are included as part of your packet. The important things we're understanding the schedules for the commissions. The Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, they meet on the first and third Tuesday of each month. Planning and Zoning Commission meets on second and fourth Tuesday of each month. The Town Beautification Committee, which is, well, it's not a requirement, okay, they're advisory to the Planning and Zoning Council. It was noted that, you know, for a public project, it may be a courtesy to go in front of them.
I was just gonna correct, the planning and zoning, I believe, is Mondays.
Mondays, okay,
That was my reaction, not to beautification.
thank you. So we did, last week, the majority of our work was to facilitate the think tank sessions. And Antonia's gonna go over, we provided a separate summary of this. So once we get through the kind of, the critical aspects of this update, I think Antonia will take us through some of our findings. These were more or less visioning or public engagement to kind of develop, help craft some mission and vision statements for both projects, as well as start the baseline for a common dialogue or a common station point from which everybody is working from on each project. So Antonia will get into that. I should mention we had, as was mentioned previously, we had our prep meeting yesterday morning with Barbara Fabiani at the state. We had members of the town of Cheshire, Jeff, Vin, and Rich, Arcadis, O&G, and myself and Jeff from TechCon. Couple of key takeaways from this. We do have state project numbers now, so these will start to become part of every piece of documentation that we craft in the future. It's 025-0102N for Norton Elementary School, and 025-0103N for North End. We talked about, so this was, we discussed both projects, so each project has a specific project number with the state. This preliminary prep meeting covered both projects because it was at such a preliminary level. As we move forward through the OSCGNR process, at our threshold meetings, schematic design review, design development review, and pre-bid conformance review, those meetings will be separated out into separate meetings. So typically, the further you go in the process, the longer the meetings are. We'll make sure that when you guys are part of those, we get your stuff out of the way so that you're not sitting in an 8-hour meeting for a PCR review.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So a couple of other things that were mentioned, as part of the grant application, the town filled out what's called the SCG 053 site analysis for school buildings projects. We just want to make sure that we circle back on that to see if we need to supplement any of the information specifically for the north end related to the additional parcels that were going to be added. I put a note in the update, we probably should have this discussion at the town level to see if if we should be combining these parcels as part of the overall application. There are benefits to that. There are also limitations, but I don't foresee you wanting to sell off that piece of property in the future. So there may be some advantages to as part of this process, doing a lot combination.
Excuse me 1 second, that parcel is definitely taken care of at this point?
It's on the
So-
agenda for Tuesday, so the same meeting Tuesday night, we have approval of the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay.
And the lease back terms
So
to the
it's
tenants.
nearly finished.
Yeah, Tuesday the 13th, hopefully it should be all.
Is that one of the public hearings?
It is. Can I get it? No, not sure.
Great.
I already have it.
We, at the prep meeting, we also talked about reviewing the space standards form.
That was just
Yeah.
on that purchase of property. So if there was any due diligence as a part of the purchase and sale of that, could you just send that along once it's available?
Phase 1 is underway right now.
Okay.
So those are all conditions of the purchase and sale.
Gotcha.
And then-
Because Barbara asked about that, and I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
there's a phase 1 going on now, and because we're anticipating the building coming down, we're not doing a lot of building inspections. It's
Okay.
on the property and so.
Okay, yeah, she asked, so that's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, we'll share this. Yep.
Sorry.
Other things that we discussed at the prep meeting was review of the space standards form that was submitted as part of the grant application to confirm eligible and ineligible parts of each building. This may be in some of our correspondence with Jeff and Vin afterwards, this may be an opportunity to package in some of the new enrollment projections in order to potentially be advantageous for incorporation of some of our additional ADA classroom spaces. If you recall, some of our previous conversations were, we have about 2,000 to 2,200 square feet of resource space for Norton that we would like to be part of this project, or I think everybody would like to be part of this project. That may be an avenue to do so as part of a recalculated space standards form.
Would the Board of Ed have to approve revised specs in order to do that? Since it wasn't on the original specifications. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, because you probably listed those in the ed specs, right? Yeah. It probably would all be done kind of at once. Yeah.
All right.
And finally, just one of our takeaways was to confirm the bonuses for total anticipated reimbursement, which I think we did after the fact.
Yes, and I mean, I don't know if you were talking about I thought you were talking about the other bonus, the preschool
Yes,
piece,
yeah.
but confirm that bonus?
Yes,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that was part of the.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were talking about the different reimbursement level, yeah, rather than, because there was a question about our original reimbursement versus our revised reimbursement through the last implementer bill. And then on top of that, there is a 5% bump on your reimbursement rate for pre-K construction, so we're gonna have to look at what square footage is there and
That's
see if
tied
we,
to enrollment in some way though, isn't it?
well, if you're building for pre-K, then you can get a 5% bump on that in your reimbursement
So we
rate.
don't have to show an increase in pre-K enrollment.
No, that was my question too, like, is this new ad only? Or is this, it doesn't say that in the statute, it says when you're building for pre-K, that you get a 5% bump.
Just for the pre-K part.
Yeah. For the pre-K part, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful, I mean, who wouldn't put
Whole building.
here's your pre-K room and.
I didn't see it on the original grant application, so it's worth keeping on the
Yes.
list and tracking.
Yeah.
And like I sent in my email correspondence, a little bit murky as to
Mhm.
was it new, existing, but we, in other projects, we applied for it.
Yeah,
You know,
no, Rich was trying to, really bring that to the table too, so
yeah.
I think we'll continue to
Yeah.
review that. Press for it.
On that, just quickly, last night, for those that were paying attention to the end of the legislative session, the bond package included the North End School and the Northern School at 50%. That their 50% amounts
Yeah.
in there.
I was reading through the articles, but they never got to that specificity.
Yeah, you saw the bill, it was there, I searched for the word Cheshire, some other surprises. They
What
both-
other surprises are in there?
There are a couple.
Like Christmas morning.
Anyway.
So, in all, very cordial and great meeting that we had with OSC GNR yesterday morning. We've personally worked with the project manager on a number of other projects and have been able to maintain a good collaborative working relationship with her. So, it was a good meeting.
She'll stay with us all the way through?
Yes, yeah. My editorial, and I don't know if I should tell this story, but we were going through a PCR approval in March and the beginning of April of 2020. And so we still needed to get this approval so we could go out to bid for one of our projects. And I remember delivering our drawings and our specifications to Barbara at her house. And this was back when, we didn't know what COVID was sticking to. She did not come to the door. I talked to her on her cell phone through her living room window. And she kept our drawings out in her porch for 48 hours before she brought it in.
We were all there at one time.
Yeah.
Wiping down our, stuff from the supermarket.
Yeah.
So in other things, next steps and takeaways, obviously preparation for the town council meeting next on the 13th. Preparation for working group meeting number 5, which is sustainable strategies. That's next Tuesday. Now, this is going to be a pretty technical type of presentation. So just be forewarned.
Okay.
Development.
Will you then bring that discussion to this group?
Yes,
Because
we can in the
obviously,
following.
that sustainability issue is one that has tremendous impact to the project.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on what technical means?
It's going to be going over building heating and cooling systems and different options and some sustainable strategies that can be part of our pricing exercise and schematic design.
Okay, great.
We'll also continue development of site and building options, as well as preparation of some baseline schematic design documents, including our basis of design narratives for building systems and finishes. So with that, what I'd like to do is, Antonia, we've also provided, it's on 8.5 by 11 in your packet. We have included our working group meeting number 4 meeting minutes, our updated project work and meeting schedule, the preliminary land use approval meeting minutes. We have the whole think tank session slide deck. We also have this think tank summary presentation, and this is the one that Antonio is going to go over. We provided it at a larger scale, at a 1:17 for you. And then finally, as I know, right? The only technical thing that we needed to submit as part of our prep meeting was the OSCGNR form, SCG 3000, which is the project team contact list. So that is included at the end of your packet, and it basically has all of the contact information for all of the critical members of the design team, the owners, partners, owner's representative, the OPMs, the construction manager, and the town code official. So Antonio, you want to take us through?
Sure. And coincidentally, these have also been uploaded to Google Drive. So if you're looking for a digital version, they're there along with some photos for your use on social media. You're welcome. The think tanks were a lot of fun, first of all. They were great gatherings with a diverse group of people. We had teachers and students and parents. We had Board of Education members. Am I missing other?
Nurse, school nurse,
School nurse.
secretaries. I mean, it was really a cross-section of stakeholders for the school.
And that was true for both North End and Norton. It was probably an overall group of 25 to 30 people, so it was lots of folks in the room. And we were there for approximately 2 hours doing this workshop intensive. The activities and the goal was the same for both groups, but as you know, we've talked about the individual characteristics of Norton and North End being slightly different in that North End is more farm and field and Norton is more woods and trails. So we were wanting to vet those ideas as well as a part of these think tanks. But as Justin said, we started with a brief presentation, and as you go through it in your deck, you'll see a lot of probably familiar content just to give them background information on site analysis and work that we've done to date, so that they could come equipped with project understanding to jump into crafting a mission, vision, and story. So for each of these activities, we'll start with the mission statement. What was involved here is we were asking very prompting questions like what should this building be about, who is this building for, and we had those on 24 by 36 boards throughout the room, and attendees would share their thoughts on Post-it notes, and then we went through an upvoting process. And from that upvoting process, we coalesced some common themes and kind of Mad Libs style, crafted them into our mission statements. And what you can see for North End and Norton is they're quite similar in a number of ways with subtle variations. So we'll read North End. We're doing this for every child, the future of the Cheshire community, and the future of the Cheshire community, so that they can feel a connection and sense of belonging to their school community and ultimately be drawn in and love learning. And for Norton, we're doing this for everyone who's here and everyone who's coming next, so that they can grow as a learner in a space that is fun and safe for mind and body, and ultimately feel like they belong, are safe, supported, and welcome. So both schools are looking to today, to the future, to really create this welcoming, inviting atmosphere where students are eager to learn and are safe. The next activity was we wanted to understand their vision for how they teach and learn and the expectations around teaching and learning today and in the future. And what we did for this exercise is, I don't know if you guys have played that game where you'll draw something and fold it over and pass it to the person next to you. They'll draw, and at the end, after it comes all the way around the table, you reveal it, and it's this person or monster made of all different individual collected parts, and the beauty of it is nobody knows what's come before them. So we went through that activity, but with words, and lots of common themes again emerged from that process, and we populated things like our culture fosters, to innovate we need, to inspire and motivate we need. And again, you can see some common themes in terms of acceptance across both North End and Norton. The need for connections to nature, the need for light and bright spaces, flexible spaces. Some of the subtle differences were at North End, there was this this sense of variety and playfulness and dreaming that came out of it. Whereas Norton, it seemed like more dynamics, out of the box thinking, different perspectives. So same common themes, but maybe what we can take away from design are some different ways that we can organize elements or create spatial adjacencies or yeah, elements in the school to really bring the vision to life.
You get to design the cache?
Cache.
I'd like to review that.
I think what we can take away from that is when, and the student, I think it goes for the student experience, the teacher experience, when there's a sense that everything that you need is there and provided for you, that part of your brain, that worry can go away. You can really focus on the innovation. So the third activity, this is where we were getting into those theming elements. We were asking, what are your likes, your like-its and your leave-its? We were asking, what relationships does your collage have with a collage of somebody else? So that's where it started. We had all of these images from 21st century learning environments to the history of Cheshire to precedent imagery that we shared with this group that we would bring to those themes of each school. And we asked attendees to create their vision collage that really reflected the things and elements that they related to most and what they connected to in other folks' collages. So for the North End, you can see it's a lot about really engaging with nature and natural materials. They really love the wood post and beam idea, the fact that this could be like a barn, embrace the open space, the farming history, mixed in with some nature trails. A lot of folks from Darcy really emphasize the space that they currently have and bringing that experience to the North End. And then for Norton, you can see it was more about the maybe visual connections to nature, the colors of nature, and gardens for science. So a little bit more of a tame way to connect with nature. And they also really loved flexible furniture, the thought that if you have tables that are non-rectilinear, students can be more inviting of folks at the table. You know, if there's a rectilinear or square table, people automatically assume 2 or 4 can sit at this table. But if you have an oddly shaped table, you can group them together, you can invite more people, more students will squeeze in and be a part of your group. So I thought that was a really fun way to think about furniture systems and ways to create that sense of belonging. And then we wanted to bring you some photos so that you can see what the process looked like. For the North End, we were in the media centers for both of the schools. And you can see the first activity in the upper left. We had the boards on tables and folks were up circulating around, very active with the upvoting process and the post-it notes. You can see on the lower left and the lower middle, that's that game where you pass the paper around and you don't share what you wrote until it's revealed at the end. And then story collages. You can see in the center, top and middle images, and the upper right is that mission statement as it coalesced. And similar for Norton. So we had a central table here where we had all the boards in the upper left to really craft that mission statement, starting off with the post-it notes and the upvoting. You can see story collages happening in the lower left and lower right. And then upper right, you can see the passing of the paper to create the vision statements. So very engaging, lots of great conversations and question and answers came out of this.
That's so great.
I'm glad. Last but not least, we wanted to just summarize. So there was a lot of excellent content at these sessions, but if we were to hone in on a few of the key elements, it's really both schools wanted to incorporate nature, but in slightly different ways. Like we talked about, North End is more about open spaces, the materiality, the physical connections. Norton is more the gardens, the colors, maybe used to nature. Not that they won't both have opportunities for outdoor learning outdoor play, all of that will be present at both sites. It's really the manifestation and the landscape aesthetic and site design that could differ. Both schools want flexible collaborative spaces, reconfigurable environments. Both schools want to inspire learning, but also in slightly different ways, like we spoke about. North End leaning into that playfulness, inquiry, calm in nature. We talked about the idea of what if this felt like a science center where the building itself is a teaching tool. Norton having more about dynamic spaces, light-filled spaces. Of course, we'll have to, again, be at both ample natural daylight, but they specifically called attention to that. And this balance of quiet and loud spaces for innovation. And again, fundamentally, both schools want safety and basic needs accounted for, like ample storage for teachers in classrooms and outside in teacher prep and workroom areas, toilets near large common shared facilities, but also in close proximity to classroom cores.
There was one particularly touching moment at our Norton session when we were going through the vision statements. So there were a number of pages for the mirror, that's what we call that thing. And the faculty at Norton had taken one of the "To Inspire and Motivate We Need," and as we were unfolding them and reading them, they wrote the first name of Principal
Grillo.
Principal Grillo. So to inspire and motivate, we need Kelly, which was pretty, because she is moving on
She's
to.
in women in middle school.
So it was, I don't think there were many dry eyes in the audience for that. So it was very heartwarming to see that interaction.
Was she at the meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, she was moved by it.
Yeah, she
I
was
would
pretty
think
touched
so.
by it, yeah.
I would think so. I know when I've talked to the town council, they have often asked me about community involvement. So I'm wondering if, how, you can incorporate some of this into your presentation. I think particularly some of these pictures of, community working on this and the overview of what the think tanks are, because I think that's a key piece for the council to make sure that people in the community are being brought into the process.
So just as a way to summarize these efforts is, we did go through some of our work today, which showed some of our organizational diagrams and some of our original site planning documents. But for the activities, they are deliberately blue sky because what we want to do is establish the touchstones for the remainder of the project. So I mentioned it before, everybody operating from the same station point or the same common language to then start making decisions as we keep going through the project. So all in all, we felt it was a very successful couple of meetings that we had. I don't know if you
Schedule
guys
has you
have gotten
finishing
anything.
schematic design by the end of July.
Yep.
What will this group see at that point?
So we will, we talked about this earlier, at our next meeting, I think we need to start showing you a little bit more stuff on the screen in terms of development of the site plan options and some of the floor plan organization. So I think we're going to rather quickly start getting into some more, we've been very deliberate in getting some of the visioning stuff and laying the groundwork for the remainder of the project. So I think at our next meeting, in addition to providing an update on the sustainable strategies discussion that we're going to be having with the working group, we're going to start getting into screen sharing and looking at these updates.
So from the point of view of this committee, is there a formal vote that we would be taking first meeting in August or something that would approve where we are at that point at the end of the schematic design process?
Yes, we would like to receive and we'll know if we're there or if we need to course correct in terms of some items. But typically, conventionally, we ask for our committees to give us a formal motion to approve the schematic design package. It doesn't, it's not a requirement of anything for OSCGNR, but I think in order to establish a baseline with this group and us as partners, you know, we kind of look at, we ask for a formal.
And should I plan on that for the first week in first meeting in August or the second meeting in July?
It should be in August, because I think at that point, or at least my opinion it should be, because at that point you'll have, you know, the cost, you'll have kind of the package together.
And like July 26th.
Is that gonna be the first time we're gonna see?
We got
this?
July 27th on our meeting schedule and August 10th.
Does the town council still have to approve schematic designs?
And we also have the board.
Or that,
So we would hold a special meeting because we don't have meetings scheduled over the summer. And I apologize for having my back to you guys, but, so we could be very flexible on that.
Sure.
But it, you know, in terms of a process protocol, would that go board, you guys, or you guys board, or, when I say you guys, I mean us guys.
I would assume it should come to this group,
building committee,
Then
board,
board.
council.
Then
you
council.
know, that, you know, they, the board and the town council shouldn't be saying anything if this group hasn't approved it.
Exactly.
And that's the town's requirement to go through those boards.
Yep.
Yeah, because for OSCGNR, you need to do that for CDs as well. But, yeah.
So
obviously.
there would be an approval by this group at our first meeting in August. Chris is asking what kind of material would we get ahead of time, so that we're not just handed something at that meeting and said, approve. How quickly or how far ahead would we begin to see aspects of this where we can discuss it before we
Well,
propose?
certainly the layouts for, the concepts for some of our building systems, as well as our site development and floor plan development, will be prepared to discuss at our next NGSCB BC meeting. We are simultaneously working on basis of design narratives, which are commonly part of a schematic design package. We will need to craft a way. They need to be ready for the cost estimators to then cost estimate. So I can't give you the exact date that we'll have those cooked, but I think,
Well, the 22nd, June 22nd, July 13th, and July 27th, you'll see a series of updates of the schematic designs, right? So the next meeting on the 22nd, you'll see basically our modifications to the conceptual moving into schematic based on all the information that we've learned to date through our working sessions and think tanks. Then we can process that here, take your feedback, and then you'll see some revisions at that next meeting, which is on July 13th. And then as we get towards the end of July, so you'll have seen it 2 or 3 times, and then what we'll do is be putting a package together for the CMR to start pricing.
So, Jeff, question for you. Does Board of Ed review these, I'll call them the test fits or the schematic layouts first before, because I mean,
I think
I don't think it's up to me to say, oh, I think the front office should look like this, because what do I have as a say in that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, what we'll do is notify them that along this process that Jeff just explained, there will be substantial pieces of information, updates provided along that way, where we could either, well, I would suggest they either come to the meetings that are being held for this committee, or watch the video. Certainly we can supplement information, any PowerPoints or whatever that are shared, I will share with them. Because I think it's better that we all kind of be in the same space together as we move through the process. And then ultimately, on August 10th, it sounds like this group would vote to move it along. And I'm assuming that, feedback from the board or whatever would have been incorporated over the past month. And then, we'll have a special meeting of the board subsequent to this approval where we would approve it. I was just gonna look really quick to see when The council would be meeting in August. I don't have their schedule in my calendar though. I don't know if you, it's always a Tuesday, right, Sean?
Yep.
So I don't seem to have that.
So it would be August 8th, August 22nd, if they meet.
Okay, so what we would try and do is book a meeting of the board between the 10th and 22nd, so that we have that, you know, the sequence of approvals through the group. And we'd be good to go. I mean, does that make sense to everybody?
Does that work with your schedule?
Yeah, and then just to add a little bit more definition, I think those bi-weekly working group meetings are our interface into the world of the ed, to make sure we are on the right track with
Mhm.
ed, and I mean, that's the whole intent of this. Those folks that are at that meeting are the people that really know, you know, are gonna comment
daily
on
functioning of the
admin, classrooms,
buildings.
special ed, those folks.
Right, but, you guys haven't put together any layouts and floor plans yet and that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah,
We've kicked around some
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, at the last meeting, weren't we here moving some of the pieces of the puzzle? And
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I wasn't.
yeah, it's all right. So we'll
So for me, I haven't
Some
seen it, so I
background.
haven't, that's, so forgive me, I didn't know that that's taking place.
yeah.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, we're gonna get a set of plans and, all right, somebody make a motion to approve it now that you've seen it right now.
Yeah, we want to avoid that.
Yeah, yeah, and just to be, you know, set the table on the schematic design, it's similar to what Justin described, is we're making sure that the space is on the right size and the right location, planometrically, elevation-wise and massing-wise, we're in the right spot, and site-wise, we're in the right spot. And then we have all the narratives associated with where we're headed with basis of design. That's all gonna be folded together with your commissioning agent on all mechanical systems and our engineer. So, you know, there's still room in design development to modify, tweak, massage, you know the process. I just wanna make sure. So we're after basic general direction schematic design. It's shaped well. And then DD is really, the design development phase is really, we're gonna add a lot more detail to this.
So, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, for the town council meeting, where they approve the schematic design, they're gonna wanna know some numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And that-
we will too.
And that's folded into, I think, what Rich is going to go over here, right? Sure, maybe.
So, do you mind if I just kind of hopefully give Chris a little bit more comfort here? In the, as part of the think tank presentation summary, there is some background space planning that starts with organizational concepts, goes to some preliminary site layouts and building plan layouts, so, if you want to.
And we had blocks, and not so much that we were moving around, but we had these cut out on home core, and so it was productive. We got some good feedback. I think we wanted to get past the work, the think tanks, and now we have what we need to get the work done. You know, schematically, I think we still need to do those working group meetings, but I think we're in good shape.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question. I'm not gonna be at the next meeting, but anything that's shared, would I be able to get like an offline copy of it to just see what was talked about?
Absolutely.
I really-
Do these guys have access to the Google Drive?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in there, just look
Yeah,
in there.
so there are,
So I'm like, oh, I'm missing the best one. I'm gonna look at stuff on the screen.
so there's probably more information in there than you wanna see,
Okay, great.
but it's all there.
Thank
Plus,
you.
like Justin today sent this package, I forwarded it
Yeah,
right away electronically.
And it's in the Google Drive under today's meeting.
fantastic.
So I've been taking supplemental materials that are shared at these meetings. As long as I have the copy, which people have been sharing, I just drop it into the meeting date. So if anybody misses a meeting or something, you can catch up there.
I should know that all answers are in the Google
The
Drive.
answer is
We
always.
all know it.
For those of us who've been using it.
On my 7 Google accounts, that's my bad.
Okay. Owner's rep, as you'll recall, we asked Rich and Arcadis to take a look at 4 different things for us. A detailed schedule, a detailed budget, and then a couple of things that would relate to our approval of purchase orders and invoices and change orders. So Rich, let me turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, as Rich said, we got into the project schedule. We met with O&G and Tecton to go over the durations of each phase of work, and then took that information and put it into a schedule that Laurel actually produced that is fairly detailed. It's got 6 pages of information, which is not going to be as detailed as the construction schedule will be, but certainly for pre-construction, it gives us enough detail to keep us moving forward. So we took that information, 6 pages, and we condensed it down into the one graphic so that it's easy enough to read. People can understand, what the duration start times are, what the duration end dates are, and then moving forward. So there's more detail that backs this up, but this really just kind of is a graphic that'll help everybody make their way through the project. So as Tecton just presented, schematic design is wrapping up at the end of July. That incorporates the cost estimates, the reviews that are necessary. So that's an all-encompassing duration, and the same is true for design development and then construction documents. There's always going to be a period at the end of that phase where there's going to be cost estimating, there's going to be reviews, and then of course the approvals before we move on to the next phase. As we get into construction, right now it's one long duration of work that we're anticipating starting in December of 2024. That'll then go through June 11th of 2026. Site work and building construction both have the same duration. I split it up just for purposes of graphics so that you can see that site work actually starts at some point to get the project in the building going. Building construction then will take over, and then as we get towards the end, then site work then starts to resume again as we start to get to the finish levels of that work. After construction and we start taking occupancy, then we get into things like demolition of the Norton School. Rich, you had a question on whether or not the demolition of the portables would take precedent over.
Just say backwards to me, I thought it'd be easier to take the portable down than the building.
Yeah.
That would be first. But.
And Laurel and I haven't had the discussion on that comment, but you're right. Once we get into the details of who is selected as the site contractor, maybe the demolition contractor, they might have different ideas of how that comes down. FF&E is a long process. It starts with initial designs. It goes into refining the design. At that point, it gets turned over for procurement. We want to time that so that we're putting it out on the street and giving the distributors and the manufacturers time to produce the product. We don't want it sitting in warehouses too long, so we want to kind of plan that out so that it's actually going to kind of go from the distributor right into the building. That's ideal. We always plan for contingencies that sometimes are not ideal, such as if there are some delays in getting into the building before the building is ready, having contingencies for storage and then moving it into the building. So those are the kinds of things that, as we lay out in the schedule, we're going to be looking at and thinking of, what are the what-if scenarios. And then, as we get into post-construction, you've got proposals here today for commissioning. So commissioning happens throughout the project, but really what we're looking at is a detailed commissioning to wrap up the building. They'll go in there and they'll do their assessments and put the building through its rigors so that it's ready for operations. and then of closeout, and then, you know, of course, closeout training, and then review and audits. The audits is really when we start to take all that information, turn it over to the state, and they'll do their final audit so that you can get your final 15%.
You and I talked quite a bit about how this group will be able to monitor the progress on construction. Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, so, yeah, as I said, right now we have a preliminary, we have a pre-construction schedule. And as we get into the detail of it, Laurel is going to start putting the detail to the construction. And, you'll have everything from, the duration of, the installation of concrete, steel, what site work is gonna take place and when, to the interior finishes, and then mechanical systems, when they get ordered and when they get installed. So there's a lot of detail to that. We will convey that information to the building committee in as much detail as the building committee is interested in seeing, or as little detail as they're interested in. But it'll be more than just that single line.
Exactly. Comments or?
Question. Forgive me if I missed it, because I was trying to read and absorb as you were talking. But this looks all very normal and very well thought out. But I'm running into every project of mine, 50, 60, 70 weeks for panels, for mechanical equipment, and talking about pre-ordering and doing this and doing that. And if you said it, forgive me, but I don't see anything in here, and I don't know if maybe it's too soon, but I don't think it's too soon to start talking about it. What's the thought?
Pre-ordering of equipment, yeah.
Somehow or another to get around so that we can have our mechanicals, we can have our electrical gear.
We did talk about that, and there's a component that the state has to be notified. Tecton has to put together a package, and then, we have to sit down and show the state what that package is, that we're going to be doing some early bid packages for procurement of equipment. So that's the kind of information that we have looked at. It's not too early to look at that, but we're still identifying what that is and what those durations are. We're starting to see that some equipment durations are going back to some level of normalcy, but we're still looking at the worst case scenarios.
Even the utilities I'm seeing, you can't get a bad amount transformer,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you have.
Yeah, we're seeing 60 months on some things, which is ridiculous.
This is a somewhat longer construction period though, it's not like you're shoehorned into a year to get the building done, so you have a little bit more time, but still, yeah, we'll be addressing that.
Understood, but you also don't wanna, you got your electrical gear in the last month before you're done with construction,
Right,
but
right.
you needed it 6 months
Right,
earlier,
right,
so
yeah.
people can start doing,
We're doing it on
Just-
almost all our jobs,
Yeah.
is we're doing a pre-package of ordering the switchgear, generator, certain panels. So it's becoming more the norm as we go through, we'll decide on.
So typically at the end of design development is when you have a good idea about your size of service. I mean, sitting here right now, I can't tell you if it's a 250 kW generator or a 400 kW generator. So usually by the end of design development, that's, you have a reasonable degree of confidence about what you can then target for early procurement. That's also the appropriate time to discuss phasing. As part of the DER, there needs to be a phase letter that identifies if there's phase one is maybe a pre-purchase of material. Phase two, that's one of the, it's just like signing a mortgage, right? You're gonna be signing all kinds of stuff at DDR and PCR. So that's typically, at the DDR review is when you broach that with the OSCG and our project manager to then schedule, if it's from there that you can schedule a phase one early procurement package a couple months out, or a month or two into construction documentation.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, and thank you for your responses. It's helpful, it gives me a comfort level, I just didn't know if there was supposed to be a tick mark on here that says really a procurement discussion or phasing or figuring it out or whatnot. It sounds like it's in the back of everybody's minds and not forgotten, just maybe not in here as granular as.
Yeah, this kind of takes it up to the 30,000 foot level, but Laurel's got that kind of detail in the pre-construction schedule that.
Not forgotten.
Yeah, no, it's not forgotten, that's correct.
I guess, I'm sorry.
Okay.
My question would be that, you know, I think when we were discussing some of the timelines, months, maybe even a year ago, we were even debating, you know, would it be possible to get into buildings in like January because of the timeline? I think that probably wasn't realistic. But it also looks like, you know, we're kind of running up July, August, and that also makes me super anxious.
Yeah.
So, you know, what do you think is a timeline that we should be ready to be gangbusters and getting our people and stuff into the building before students arrive?
Yeah, and you know, we've all talked about the horror stories of scrambling in August, which
Yeah.
we all try to avoid. So we think that, you know, May, June is a great time to start getting your furniture into the building. And then, of course, you can off-gas a lot of the stuff that's in there. During that time, you could schedule the teachers for coming in and setting up their classrooms. That'll probably happen maybe sometime in July.
And that's fine. I just, you know, looking at this calendar, and there are a number of things, like I'm not familiar with closeout and training, whether that's, you know, more mechanical or anything. It just running up into July, August, and like the closeout training into September. I just wanted to make sure that May, June is what I can think in my head about. All right, this is when we're going to start getting some people in there and hands on.
We're all aware of those dates, and we're trying to do what we can. You know, obviously, you know, when the documents get finished at a certain time, and then, you know, you get it out for bidding, and then you're ready to actually break ground. You know, that's a certain time frame, and right now it's looking like that's December. If we can get some of that time back, then, you know, then that schedule can move back.
Yeah, we're looking at clip-off milestones, so as long as we, you know, maintain a good pace, that's why, you know, I started to wonder about the schematic into August versus July. You know, I want to be realistic, but
yeah,
I also want to try and buy as much time on the front end so that we have that on the back end.
We all do, yeah, because we don't want to shortchange the construction schedule.
Absolutely.
You know, but, you know, in all fairness to Tecton, it does take time to get these documents, to get the design completed,
Sure.
get the documents produced, so, and then, of course, then there's the approval phase and so
Yeah.
forth, so.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys have been great, and I know that I've probably been more intimately aware of the progress they've made, and it's great, than others, and I really don't know what's a fair thing, but I guess I just wanna articulate again for the group that, you know, May, June move-in is what we're shooting for, and anytime we can ensure that we're maintaining that pace, makes me feel a little bit better every time, and I know that we've got 3 years, so there'll be a lot of Tums between now and then anyway, but, you know, just, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
The original start date, as you'll recall, there were a couple different schedules that were floating
Yeah.
around. And we had a conversation about that, both of them from Colliers, both of them dated the same, but one showing construction starting in October and one showing it starting in January. We've been trying to see if we can push that back a little bit. This shows it starting in December. It still makes me nervous if we have a really cold winter, we could be, you know, getting off to a difficult start. If at all possible, Rich and I talked about this the other day, we'd love to see if we can get it started as early as we possibly can. And, you know, that could be maybe November, where we know we can get concrete poured and that sort of thing without extraordinary measures. And then the same thing as what you were talking about, Jeff, is, you know, when Rich and I were talking, you know, the school that I built, we tried to get in for the first day of school. Teachers were running around 2 days before trying to get rooms set up, and we couldn't get the CO, and we ended up having to push school off a week. I'd prefer not to do that.
Exactly.
We don't wanna see that scenario.
Yeah, the horror story, there was a school in East Providence, Rhode Island, that did not pass their final fire alarm inspection prior to opening. For the start of the school, it was not communicated to the parents, and you had parents showing up with their kids on the first day of school being turned away. Yeah, their nice new school.
Caveat is, that wasn't our project.
That wasn't our.
Should've
Let's
led with
make sure
that,
we
Jeff.
know that.
Should've started with that.
Nor was it any engineers that we have.
I seem to recall in your documentation that every project was always done on time.
This one, absolutely.
Thanks for clarifying.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear
Yeah.
on schedule, and believe me, we'll do everything possible to consolidate where we can and be responsible and make sure we still get a good set.
Yeah, I think the sentiment is relatively obvious, like, oh geez, you wanna get in before school starts? Oh, really? But when I look at these documents, that's where I get a little bit of
Sure.
anxiety, and I felt like it was worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Well, and
Just as a
that
reminder.
move is not easy for teachers. I mean, you'll be packing up stuff from 2 different schools, moving them into a new building. There'll be piles of things that'll be sitting in the gym,
Yeah.
cafeteria that has to get out to classrooms, teachers running in, trying to get brand new rooms set up. It's a hectic time. And you can't compress it into 1 week, you know, it's
Yeah.
gonna be. So if we can get in there mid-July, that's fantastic. They've got 6 weeks before school starts. Then you can get things organized. And there's gonna be lots of they're gonna be still working around last minute contractors and things like that, we know that.
Yeah, maybe we do track it as a star on this, because I understand, you know, when that yellow beige ends, that's really when you should have your CO. The other stuff, the commissioning, closeout training, all that, you know, you should be able to occupy the building at the end of May. Is that's what the intent of that
The
part is.
FF&E,
Yeah, like all
that's
of-
where we should be getting
That's the, no, this one right here.
up here.
So like right,
The
Like
site work?
right here is like your
Okay.
CO.
Yeah, well, June 11th.
Right,
Yeah.
Laurel, isn't that what you
Yes,
had
yes,
tracked?
Yeah,
yes.
that would have taken some of the agita away if there was
Sorry,
some
yeah.
sort of marker there.
It's right here.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. It's not on
Breathe,
your,
Jeff,
you
breathe.
have it on your version, so.
Make
Yeah,
it a
that's-
picture of the bottle of Tums going in the trash.
That's the real date, that's the one you want. The others, you know, are some site work and demolitions, and you don't care about that, so you
Yeah.
can be getting in the building and
Sure.
doing your thing.
The other thing I do want to caveat is the demolition of the existing Norton School, and if the parking lot is going in the same place, not really
Yeah.
gonna happen in 3 months, so. just
Right.
wanna-
Yeah, there'll be a little bit of.
We've got something
Yeah,
going on that we'll
I
have to
can
deal with.
certainly appreciate the chaos that will be created by demoing a building at the same time we're trying to run a building, and that is fully understandable. I just think,
We just may need to have a temporary parking lot or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we should.
Well, if
It's
it
right where the
happens way
building
it's
is.
scheduled, as the whole demo's taking place in the summertime. when there's no
But then we
students
still
there.
gotta.
right,
Then
then you gotta
yeah,
build the
still gotta
parking
put the
lot.
parking lot.
So, you know, if we're across the street or whatever, we can work something out. It's just, you know, getting into the building was the initial concern. But
Yes,
that's fair.
And then, yeah,
Laurel,
so I'm
because-
worried about getting you to the building.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, fair enough.
Yeah.
You're worried about getting in it.
Yeah,
To bus people to the building.
Laurel, do you think it's enough of a margin call where if you have the benefit of planning the academic calendar in advance
Yeah.
from the board,
I did.
where you may be able to
Push it a week.
get a week or so?
Yeah,
at
I
the
already thought about that, I've talked to our calendar committee about that. You know, there'll be a board election, there'll be new members of the board before that comes around, actually, presumably. So, you know, I will continue to talk to them about that, and that, you know, we probably won't be starting until after Labor Day that year.
Yeah, we try to encourage that when you have a major project like
Yeah.
this. Pick a summer, it's
Let
gonna
alone
be our
two.
extended summer, and
Yeah.
then work your district's
Much time to
calendar
do that.
around
Yeah.
it, yeah, to make
Yeah.
that
Rather than
summer,
hustling around.
2026 be the longest summer.
Right, right. which I probably won't get a lot of complaints about. Not that summer anyway.
Unless we get like 4 blizzards.
Yeah. Canada's on fire or
Right,
something.
the kids on the other end.
Put that in standard.
When the kids are still in school.
Yeah, how often does that happen?
Yeah.
All right, any other comments or questions on the schedule? All right, Rich, thank you very much.
Okay. So we got a couple other documents.
Yeah, and we need to take some votes on the budget.
Yeah, so let's get into the budget sheets. We've got North End and Norton. We'll take North End first. And so what we did here is we had Emily Fuentes from our office work with Vin and the finance people from the town to identify, what the process is as far as, getting things into the Munis system, but also identifying the budget that was submitted as part of the grant application, which is really what you're seeing in column A. And so column A is really the baseline as it stands right now. You can see that there are some lines that are highlighted. Emily went through the building committee's meeting minutes and identified the approvals that were made at those meetings for contracts such as ONG, Tecton, and Arcadis. And so based on the budget and what those contracts were, she made some adjustments, which you'll see in column C. What we'd like to do tonight is to basically say the bottom line of the budget does not change, but what does change is the order of how we've put the values in. And in so doing, you can see that that at the bottom of the page in the owner's contingency, we were able to take some of those variances from the budget to the contract and put those into an owner's contingency. Now, that's not to say that those lines aren't going to move somewhere in the future, but for now, as a starting point, because this is really what OSCGNR is looking for, is to say what's the baseline as we start the project, not from the grant application, but from the project, and this is what Emily has done today.
So the one question that I had with Rich when we went through this is obviously the construction number is a huge number here. And as we're going through, we're going to need a lot more detail in terms of what that entails and how we monitor that. So we would want backup for that particular line and not have a, $73,000 item.
So right now, it's one big number.
Right.
Right, and then as ONG starts to get into, and the same with TAC, Tecton's cost estimate. As you start to go through the process and in the schematic design development, you're going to start to flesh out what the detail is on the construction. So it'll start with cost estimates, and it'll break it down into the different components, the concrete, the steel, the interior finishes, the masonry, the site work, and so forth. And that'll give you the detail. Those numbers we want to have match what is in the budget here. So that's really the objective as we go forward, is to have the design start to, kind of come in conformance with what's been budgeted. If there are discrepancies and the design is starting to trend where the cost estimates are showing a higher number, then what we have to do is to work to get those numbers down. How we do that is a process of value engineering, but it also could mean that certain finishes get changed, maybe the scope gets modified a bit so that we can bring it back into compliance. Based on our initial assessment of the cost per square foot, we thought that you had a reasonable number to achieve the scope that you're looking to accomplish, square footage and so forth. So
It's always the finishes that go after.
the finishes are like the low-hanging fruit, right? What we try to do is to work it so that it's not the finishes.
No. That's why I don't know. Perhaps what would be good is to just provide the committee with an example of the type of cost estimate that we get and schematic design, design development, just so you can have some comfort level around the information. So,
And I know that will come, that detail will come. Questions and comments on this budget?
Why did the insurance go up so much? Almost double the building risk insurance? Or is it just a low estimate to begin with?
Yeah, so I think, you know, based on our experiences, I think we felt like, you know, what was budgeted needed to be maybe augmented, so we modified that line item to go up. We don't know yet what that's going to be, that's all a function of, the cost of the project.
Right. So would it basically go out to different insurance agents at a certain time in the process to purchase the insurance, or how's that work?
Yeah, no, I think, is the town going to purchase the builder's risk, or is that gonna go through O&G?
Usually the town does it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it both ways, but, you know, that way, you know, you're avoiding the markup of O&G, so, if the insurance carrier has an idea of what the value of that is, I mean, you know, we have a budget for the cost of the project, and they can say, you know, we base it on X, you know, X percentage of, you know, cost per project or per thousand, so.
And this budget can be adjusted.
Yes,
as we
it
go
will,
along.
right, it'll be adjusted. As we go forward, there will be many changes, there will be more things that we'll identify that we're gonna need to, you know, there could be consultants that we haven't considered yet that we're gonna need to identify. So we might need to carve out a line item for a consultant that we didn't conceive of, and we'll do that. You know, could go through Tectonic, could, you know, go through the town.
And Arcadis will give us this budget at the first meeting of each month, with whatever detail needs to come with that.
Correct, yeah. It could be as detailed as this, or it could be more higher level where it's, you know, here's what the hard cost is, here's what the consultants are, the soft cost maybe, as far as FF&E as we get into that, and then contingency so that we can see what the spend is on the contingency, if anything, and you get a sense for, you know, where things are.
Dennis, you have
Yeah, just a quick one, the owner contingency, that includes both design and construction? Or is that just a wrong number?
Right now, it's just it's owner's contingency, Dennis, but I believe that there's construction contingency in the GMP, or there will be.
Yeah, but that's usually theirs.
That's theirs, right. So, yeah, so right now, it would be, because I don't see a line item for construction contingency, so that would probably be.
So, what you'll probably see on the first SD estimate is your 70 through 5 or whatever number, or the 62, you're looking at north, right? So the GMP number was 70 through 5, 700, will likely have like an SD design contingency and GMP rolled into that total number. That's where it'll live in that line.
In the construction budget, right? Yeah.
Unless the owner's contingency, like, it's way higher than 5%, so.
Right.
Unless there is some mixing of the bag right now, I don't know. I don't know what, I don't
Well, I mean,
remember what.
typically, our design contingency is gonna be less and less as you.
That's right. It disappears as you.
Yeah, because they'll be expecting that to finish.
Yeah, that's right. But we, you know, we've done budgets where you'll see an owner's contingency, but you'll also see a construction contingency for things that are valid change orders that wouldn't come out of the GMP contingency. So, you know, that's why we would separate it out. But right now, it's just one line item. You know, we can differentiate that in the future.
Yeah, probably around DD.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we would approve the current budget, and it's in the gray right now, this evening. The first two columns would then be eliminated, so when you see it at our next meeting, we would be working off of this new approved budget.
Yeah, you'll approve column C, right? And then at the next meeting, column C will become column A. There won't be any recommended budget adjustments in column B. And so A and C will equal each other. And then from there, we can start to make whatever adjustments going forward.
Until we start hiring these consultants, and then the real numbers will
The real numbers will happen in the commitments. So these are still the budget line items. But if the budget line items are not sufficient enough to cover the actual commitments, then we would make those adjustments. That's-
Yeah,
Just wanted to make one point. Up on the top right where we have the anticipated state reimbursement rate, the 50% is the maximum reimbursement rate we would get. Right now, though, those numbers are not based on 50% because of the space standard and the calcs that were done. So we're somewhere around 46%, I think, for the Norton Elementary and 44%. I don't know if we wanted to footnote that in future drafts, but I just don't want to go through the project and everybody's expecting 50% where, because of the way the state gives us maximum reimbursement, we're not quite there. It'd be nice if we could get it all the way to 50, but.
But that also doesn't take into account any ineligibles or limited eligibles.
Right. These numbers at the top, though, those are accurate, based on the Collier's budget, the grant funding and the town cost. Those are accurate right now, but they're not based on 50%, they're based on the lower percentage.
Yeah.
and I had mentioned that when we were talking in our Zoom meeting the other day.
Okay.
And I had the percentage, I don't have them with me now. I had both percentages out, 4,600 on
Yeah.
4,400 or something.
And then there's ineligibles that come off that to begin with, so I just wanted for the committee members just to be aware of that.
So going forward, as you update this month to month, is the estimated grant funding going to change? You're gonna adjust that based on what the eligible reimbursements are, or is that just gonna be the same number for the whole time?
The grant funding is gonna stay the same. I think, you know, when the grant application went in, it went in for the value that you see at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
That doesn't change.
But we're going to get a certain reimbursement, and we should know like what that dollar figure is tracking versus what the estimated number was. So are you gonna show that on this or not?
We should, because there should be, depending on how big the building is, there will be a discount.
Well, the estimated won't change, but the actual,
Right.
like what we're expecting is, and that's what I wanna see on here. Because I think of it as a game, right? We're trying to hit 50% as close as possible. I know we're not gonna get there, but I wanna see what that number is going up or down as we go through the budget updates and everything of what we're tracking and what we think we can get a reimbursement.
So, do you mind if I just?
Yeah,
please. For a second? The thing that we need to be careful about, it's like watching the stock market minute to minute. Because if you're gauging it based on what your budget says is eligible for reimbursement versus not eligible, any contingency that's part of your project budget or GMP budget is not eligible from the start. And by the very nature of these cost estimates, a 8% design contingency, which on the North End project is probably $5 million or more, that is all listed as ineligible until it actually becomes identified as part of the project. So when you start in schematic design, you're going to have a high degree of ineligibles that it's a little bit of a false snapshot of what your eligibility is for the total project. So
Go ahead.
You could make the argument that we're gonna spend all the contingency.
yes, but also your design contingency theoretically is zero on bid day because you don't, that design contingency is an estimate contingency,
Right.
frankly. There's going to be a CM contingency that remains to be ineligible, but that's tied to the percentage of construction cost. Your design contingency starts pretty fat at the start of the project and gradually goes down to zero. It'll be like 8% or 10%
Escalation too.
and escalation.
So in order to track what you're asking, though, is that you would also have to separate out the project for, the eligible versus the, for the space standards, right? So, you've got eligible space standards, and if you exceed those become ineligible. So you're gonna start tracking the construction based on, the size of the project of, so much square footage is eligible, and then the other square footage is not eligible. So, as Justin said, you know, the target it's a moving target until the final audit. And so, you know, to track that on a monthly basis to say, well, here's where we are on a percentage, I don't think is going to be, it seems like it's useful information because, you know, you could say, well, we're getting close to our target, you know, it's kind of like that gauge that, you know, the closer you are, you feel as though you're actually hitting your stride. But that's gonna change on a constant basis, and there's gonna be so much data that I don't think that it's a good use of the budget tracking. I think what we wanna do is to be able to have a baseline that shows, here's what the eligible percentage is, right? It's 50%. We have a budget. We're going to show you what our commitments are. We're going to show you what those spends are. And I think that's probably the more important thing that you're going to want to see. Not so much what the reimbursement rate, because you're not going to know that until the final audit. And that's going to be, that's 2.5 years away, or 3 years away.
Based on what you're saying, I'm wondering if that box in the upper right-hand corner should just be taken out altogether.
I'll ask our person that does this, but she's done enough of these where I think that, you know, that's kind of useful information. We could eliminate that because, you know, that's information that
If it's gonna be a
It's
static
superfluous, right?
number at this point, and we can't really monitor it or change it,
Well, I think
doesn't
the one
tell
that
us
changes
anything.
is the one at the bottom, amount reimbursed to date. Like, that's gonna start filling up a bucket of 38,058.
So what we want to do is we want to track this budget so that you understand on a monthly basis, you know, what the overall budget is, what's been committed to date, right? So what the contracts are the contracts more or less than what the budget is? If it's less, that's good. If it's more, that's not so good, because then you're going to then start seeing where, you know, you're starting to eat into your owner's contingency. You don't want to eat into your owner's contingency too much at the beginning of the project. But as you get later into the project, you might want to say, hey, look, you know what, we think that we're in good shape, and we'd like to maybe augment the design or purchase some things that we didn't consider because we didn't think that we could afford it. So I think that's where the usefulness of this information is going to be, is to track the budget so that you understand what your spends are, what on a percentage basis, and whether or not, you know, you've got money that you can afford to, you know, maybe, you know, get that other playground or whatever it is that you're looking for.
And as we go along and talk about it, the question will often come up, is it reimbursable or not reimbursable?
Well, and of course, that's where it'll start to affect the reimbursement rate. So at some point, you'll say, yes, we'd like to buy that, but we know that that's not eligible for reimbursement. So, you know, that's gonna be 100% on the town.
Other comments?
And that information, we could certainly track.
I was just gonna ask if we can maybe then track at least what, you know, a column, it's yes, no for reimbursable or
Yeah.
not, or so that at least we can see where we are and if we're doing things that are reimbursable or are not, would help us probably make a decision, because it's a much bigger impact to vote on change whether no, it's not reimbursable.
Right.
Versus one.
Because you don't get that coupon for, you know, 50% off of whatever you're purchasing. You're paying full
Almost
price.
twice as much.
Yeah.
And that might be something more that we want to talk about when we get to the change order process.
Typically, your form has, here's a change order amount, how much of it's reimbursable at your reimbursement rate, so it'll be tracked.
But even in the budget itself, prior to changes, what of that is not reimbursable, what is? Because there's already things in here you're saying that might not be, right?
Yeah.
And it's right now, we're too high a level to know the granularity, to know all the things that are. We don't know what.
Well, isn't it some portion of the construction, or I guess it prorates to their fees as well, but isn't the majority of the ineligible construction costs?
It's mostly gonna be construction costs, yeah, because it's the size of the building, and it's a function of that.
It's a bit of a guess, right? It's what things are gonna be.
Well-
How much utilities are off property, for instance?
Right.
We don't know exactly the cost. Yeah. It would be
Just-
good to just track those.
One thing that would help when you guys present the schematic is give us the state maximum area for the building.
Yeah.
And give us what we're actually getting.
So if, I'd like a motion then to approve the current budget as listed here for the new North End Elementary School.
And so,
Dennis,
I'll
seconded
second.
Greg. Discussion?
I would just like to say, you know, when you mentioned this much detail or higher level, I'd like this much detail.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, in other words, similar spreadsheet to this
Yeah.
every month.
Yeah, and if anything, I want more detail. I want backup for that big construction piece and that. So as we go along, I'm gonna wanna see this fleshed out. We may not want, you know, 5 pages of this, or maybe one overall sheet, but it's a backup for us. But if we go to
But
other,
no less detail.
other groups like the town council or whatever, we could say, here's where we stand right now.
Minimum 10 font.
All right, no other
I'd say
comments, then all those in favor? That's unanimous. And now I'll take a motion to approve the Norton budget, current budget as detailed, same as before.
I'll move.
Greg,
I'll say.
seconded by Dennis. Any conversation on that? So it's basically the same, it's slightly different numbers because obviously the projects are a bit different. Okay. And all those in favor? And unanimous. All righty, next those two.
Okay, so we have one other document, and that's the request to approve various procedures. And we're not asking for motion tonight. I think this is something that could be reviewed and considered. But just kind of a high level, you know, this is a process for invoice and requisition processing, you know, changing purchase orders, you know, increasing that value, and then change order processing. So, you know, kind of at a high level, what we're saying here is on the invoice processing, what we plan to do is to collect all the invoices, Tecton, from O&G, from other consultants, do a review, get it into the budget so that we can track it against what the commitments are, and then put it together as a package with a recommendation that we would bring to the committee to say, yes, we've reviewed these and we accept these invoices for the building committee's approval and payment. And then as we get into construction and we start to address things like change orders, what we'd like to do is, and I know there was talk of working groups for review of proposals as they come in. We'd also like to recommend that you create a working group for review of change orders. You know, change orders could be very tedious, and that's not something that you really want to be sitting around at a building committee meeting to discuss. What you'd like to have is a working group that has reviewed these and brings their recommendations to the full committee for action.
So those change orders would have first gone through O&G, through you, through
Tecton and Arcadis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Arcadis, and then
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
So by the time it comes to us, it shouldn't be controversial in most cases. but-
No, if it's a valid change, right, where it's not in the construction documents, and we feel as though the pricing is fair, then we would give it that review and we would make recommendations. And we would probably bring it to the working group, so the working group can understand what those change orders are, and then they can bring it up to the full committee for action. Knowing that, you know, the working group is looking at it and saying, yeah, we agree with your assessment, and we're gonna bring it to the committee, so that it could be voted on.
And then there are procedures in here for smaller change orders that need to be approved immediately.
There are gonna be instances during construction where there could be things that you wanna have action taken right away. And so, you know, based on the recommendation of our people in the field and Tecton, we would maybe reach out to a member of the working group and say, hey, you know, here's the situation, you know, this isn't an option, this has to be done. You know, and the example I give here is that you run into, you know, a piece of pipe that you didn't realize was there from the surveys, could be wrapped in transite, you know, so that there's asbestos and that's got to be remediated, and that's the kind of thing that you want to say, we got to get it out of the ground and we need to do it right now, type of thing. So, yeah, we would say that, you know, you put a limit on that, so that, you know, that's not something that, you know, is the people in the field or even the working group is committing to a large sum of money, but that they're realizing that, you know, this needs to happen quickly so that it can move forward, the construction can move forward.
So I'm sure that people haven't had a chance really to fully read this and digest it. I'll put it on a future agenda for us to take formal action on it. That's okay with everyone?
Just one thing, the issue check, on the invoice processing, the town issues checks bi-weekly, so everybody knows. We could correct that.
Okay.
I would also like to ask, since the architect is not the final say, but essentially the final say on all design elements and whatnot, if you guys have any input on this.
I think we'll review this, but at the start, I think it's a triumvirate that reviews change orders. It starts with ONG to understand entitlement between subcontractors, because some change orders that come up may simply be a scope gap between one bid package and another. So we rely on the construction manager to first kind of vet out the entitlement before it becomes a review on our desk.
I just meant on this quick approval thing,
Yeah.
just to make sure you guys are in agreement, because I'm gonna trust you're the overall keeper of the contract documents.
We'll take a look at it, and we'll put it on a future agenda, so we can make sure. And if there's any input in between, you know,
Yeah.
send it over to me or to Rich, and if you have any questions or anything, make any adjustments.
I already got into it. No.
I'm just saying.
All right, we all set on that? Chuck, I'm coming back to you. Commissioning agent.
Come back to me before you see him at risk.
Yes, not for seeing the risk. Commissioning agent.
Alright, so, yeah, average, it's pretty clear, but there's average ranks, I mean, there's 4 that are at 4 or better, or the ranking of them. And there's 4, the same 4 that received the #1 choice amongst people. If you even look at like the medium rank, there's 2 clear people that are kinda out of the running, so. I can run down the average score ranking. That'd be Colliers had an average rank of 2. CES had an average rank of 2.13. Sustainable Engineering, 2.25. And then Van Zelm was right at 4.0. The other
What was
two-
that last one?
Van
Oh,
Zelm,
okay, and that was what?
right, it was 4.0.
Oh, okay.
The other 2 were at 4.75 and 5.88.
So Van Zelm is still quite a bit away from the three.
Van Zelm's quite a bit away from the other 3. They did have a #1 choice. They didn't have anything lower than 5. Their median's 4, so it really depends on whether or not we want to put 3 or 4 off the bid as the max.
All right, so Collier, CES, Sustainable Engineering, it sounds like we have those 3. If somebody wants to make a motion, and then we can discuss where we want to have.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to submit continue with an RFP for Colliers, Sustainable Engineering, and CES as a commissioning agent.
All right, do we have a second on that? Second. Second? All right, any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Do we have any other motions?
I would make a motion for Van Zelm as a, receive an RFP as a commissioning agent.
I would second
Okay. Discussion on that?
They seem quite a bit lower. Why do you think they should be in the mix?
I mean, I really looked at them all just based on the introduction letter. I thought they had the best one. I mean, it was 2 pages, and I kind of like the reasons that they made for why they should be the commissioning agent. So, I mean, it's an RFP phase. I don't think it hurts. It's going to help in terms of getting numbers. I don't think it hurts to get another one out there. And again, I mean, somebody had them as their #1 choice, so I think we should respect that.
people in the working group want to do another interview, that's fine with me.
Well, these aren't gonna be an hour long.
No, they're not.
You don't think so?
No.
Feel pretty confident.
Any other discussion? And all those in favor of adding Van Zel? And that's unanimous. All right. Do we, yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I've been working with Emily from Arcadis on gathering all the documents, and before Chuck leaves, one of the things that we need to provide as part of the document package for the audit are all the matrices for approval. So, Chuck, do you have them all, including this one, Chuck?
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be elaborate, but I need to include it for the audit.
Yeah, I shared them all with Jeff
Jeff.
all along, so
Jeff
yeah.
has
So if you
I'll
share
this
that one with
you
me.
right now.
Yeah, Jeff also has our individual votes when we vote on it, and we get an email back with that. We send that to him, so he has an actual record of the individual people to back up the matrix.
All of that information is required for the audit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our attorney has said that all along, which is why we've been very careful, make sure we kept all that documentation.
I just shared this one with you, Ben.
Okay, thanks, that's all I need.
But if you're missing anything, let us know, we do have
No,
that.
I'm in good shape with just about everything. I just need the contracts, which I'll get from Sean, and then,
Yeah.
I
Do
already
we
have
need
the
someone
whole
to coordinate
file
the
share.
work of the working group, or the four of you will
You
just kind
can
of
give us access to the.
pull that together?
Oh, yeah.
Once the
Yeah,
hours
that's what I talked to
come
her
back.
before. I
Yeah.
asked if you want Google Drive work for you, and she said,
I
yeah.
was leaving the office when I heard pick up the phone.
Dennis.
RFP was supposed to go out on the 9th.
Yeah, and it's coming back when,
I had the
So
schedule.
it's July, right?
yeah, so we have one more meeting to organize ourselves.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if somebody wanted to take on the responsibilities. Getting the group together or whatever.
Well, we have to issue the RFP still.
That'll be Jeff, right?
We agreed
Yeah.
that that was okay.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so the RFP is
Oh, no, we
supposed to
didn't.
go out tomorrow.
You would've done it.
It's due on the 28th of June,
We have to say when
That's a
the
super
interview.
note.
and the interview says the 6th.
That's just basically
Of July.
Sixth of
You wanna
July.
say-
handwritten
6th of
electronic
July.
note.
That's what it's set up for right now.
I can't be on the
Don't bring
committee. then I'm
pads
on vacation.
anymore, I bring this,
Yes.
and I've got all that stuff. Sorry, guys.
Unless you want to change the date. I mean, the RFP hasn't gone out, we'll probably send it in.
So like,
RFQ.
this is the next generation.
When you guys need a
I could just
commissioning agent by,
keep track of everything, so this virtual meeting. and all that
1 week isn't gonna matter.
Thank you very
I'll give you the 1 week in this case.
It's really not a strong suit.
It's, we can, you know, frankly, we've had, nobody's checking when you're having your commissioning, design kickoff. We want them to weigh in on the basis of design, and they will be working to develop the owner's project requirements as part of that as well. So that's typically something that kind of coalesces from the end of schematic design to the beginning of design. There's about up to 4 weeks interstitial period there.
Well, let me give you some dates here. Our committee meets on the 13th of July. The town council meets on the 11th of July. So if you did the interviews on the 6th, we're gonna miss the town council meeting before, because this group wouldn't approve it till the 13th. So we will miss the town council meeting. If you can back it up, you
Yeah.
potentially could do your interviews.
what day is the 28th of June?
28th, that's the day that the RFP is due, right now,
Right.
that's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So we can do the interviews on the 29th?
You could. Paperwork is due on the 28th, you can meet people on the 29th. And it's not gonna be, the RFP is not gonna be a great big document.
It still won't matter though, because we can't approve it as a committee here to the 11th.
No, we would have to have a special meeting
can have a
to
special
approve it
meeting.
before the town council meeting.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm fine with that.
I can do 29.
If
Thursday, the 29th.
There you go.
All right, so move the interviews to Thursday, the 29th. Could you make a note of that, because you're gonna have to, this is for when you put out the RFP.
That night? You're having a meeting on the 29th, is that
No,
what
the
you're saying?
29th,
the
the RFP
interviews.
is due from the commissioning agents on
Oh,
the
okay, I
28th.
got you.
The interviews will be on the 29th.
Okay.
Uh,
That's for the RFP.
Right, we will do a special meeting, a July 4th picnic somewhere. Somewhere that week, probably the 6th, and then we can get it to the town council for their meeting on the 11th. So it would be a very quick, we're planning to maybe do a Zoom or Google meeting, because it would be, the working group coming and saying, here's what we recommend, we take a vote, we're done.
Start at 7, every half hour.
Yeah, half hour.
Yeah. Do we have to do reference checks?
You should.
Although we kind of did that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, with some of these.
Some of these
you have-
we've heard
You have some
already.
reference people right here that you could get on the phone.
Right. I will say Van Zelm only gave phone numbers, not emails, so if someone checks them, it's pretty much a cold call.
Yeah, so your working group should make a couple of phone calls for each of them.
Can I ask a question and just perhaps offer a little bit of advice?
Sure.
So you're setting up interviews for Friday night before the 4th of July weekend?
Thursday.
Thursday, okay. I thought the
Well-
28th is a Thursday, isn't it?
28th
No,
of
that's a
June
Wednesday.
is a Wednesday,
Okay.
and the 29th of June is a Thursday.
If they
I don't work
don't
on
want to
Fridays
come.
Right.
They don't want the job
Hey,
done, right?
we've had an interview on December 27th before, so that was a.
It's 27, come on, it's not like it was the 24th.
Yeah.
There is a Board of Ed meeting that night, so Jeff and I won't be able to attend the interview.
On which night, Thursday?
29th.
Well,
The interviews are just the-
interviews-
it's
29th
just
is just the
four of us.
interview, it's just the,
Okay.
just
the
the
work
four people on the working committee, that's all.
Okay.
Where
So
are we
we
gonna,
don't-
where are we gonna have that to, the same spot over there, or which?
Just
If you-
Is it right here, this table?
What I was thinking.
Right.
Why don't we do it here, start at 7 o'clock,
Yep.
half hour each.
Yeah, I'll send a note to Noel to book it.
Who do we want to pick? You want to, anyone in particular for references?
I'll take Colliers.
I'll take CES
I'll go Van Zelm.
All right.
What
Yes,
time are you
I've
starting,
got
7 o'clock?
7.
Seven,
And till about 9?
30 minutes, 5 minutes until or something.
Yeah, 25 minutes and 5-minute break.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, I was like 30 minutes, maybe better, so 25.
Alright. So Vince, when you plug in the stuff into the RFP before you send it out, or you just send it to the 4 people on the working committee, just to take a quick look, make sure that everything looks okay, and then it can go out to these 4 companies. This is a slightly different process we've used before, but I think it's, in the long run, much more efficient for us as we get into all these other little positions. Any other comments or questions on commissioning agent? Items for future agenda, the only thing that I have, we had talked at one point about project labor agreements. Jeff had done a workshop with us on it. We've never taken any formal vote or even had a real discussion on it. So I'm thinking, at some point in the near future. And we had said we really wanted to get the input of our owner's rep and CM at risk before we had that conversation, so that now we have everyone on board, that that's something we should put on a future agenda. Anybody have anything else that they want for future agendas?
Your next consultant, the environmental consultant, where are we in with that? The hygienist, the abatement person, that wants to be soon too, right? Are you guys on?
The abatement part, we didn't have the information. I can't remember what happened there. Somebody was
We wanted
supposed
to
to
get
get.
qualifications.
We need a scope.
Qualifications.
What's that?
We need a scope.
We need a scope. And who's
Yeah,
the
because
scope?
remember there was gonna be the meeting that we had upstairs
Right.
2 meetings ago. The team was gonna collaborate because O&G had some concerns and, right? That was the discussion that we had, was you guys were gonna collaborate on what exactly we wanted to require by way of that scope.
Yeah, because you want to do it, so. is that
You
what
would
it
like to, yeah, we would like to get an understanding of what our hazardous materials costs are while we're putting our estimates together. And it's about time to test the building,
So-
not for PCBs, but for asbestos.
So we're asking architects, CM, and owner's rep to get together, put together a scope for the abatement person, and we'll bring that up in a,
Yeah, I'll draft a document.
okay. And that could go directly to you.
The scope, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to bring it up here first. It could go, as soon as they add the scope, it can go to you, and we'll put together an RFQ for it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else? If not, this is one of our longer meetings, so productive, I hope. If not, then I'll take a motion to adjourn. So moved. Seconded? Seconded?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.